Welcome to a noob's guide to the Sisters of Twilight. This is Nyestra, and this is Arahan. Together, they are the Sisters of Twilight, the defenders of the weave, Ariel's angels, and proof that twin threesome fantasies are a horn dog preoccupation worldwide. Part of the Twisted and the Twilight DLC for Total War Warhammer 2, their names sound like a bad Stephanie Meyer sequel, but these twin engines of destruction are a buddy cop duo whose crazed hijinks and witty dialogue conceal a propensity for violence so extreme they could only have gotten it from their father. When they're not trading pithy banter, these sisters are restoring the weave of life and death by reducing the carbon footprint of Warhammer one body at a time. The king and queen of the Wood Elves would normally lead this green initiative, but one is a goat man and the other has locked herself in a tree and refuses to come out. Instead, the best hope for the Wood Elf world is two barely legal girls in skin-tight leather catsuits, advised here by Nyeth the Prophetess, whose inclusion is a nice nod to the old lore, but removes any chance of her ever becoming a playable lord, though she likely saw that coming, as even you've seen this environmental Aesop fable trope before, in Avatar, Pocahontas, the Lorax, Princess Mononoke, Medicine Man, the Green Inferno, Tarzan, Last of the Mohicans, and the Predator, because when you start burning forest with the natives still in them, it's only a matter of time before the trees start talking. Nobody is quite sure where these sisters came from, though, since the Wood Elves record their history in dance, and Bob Fosse isn't exactly renowned for story at the best of times. War Dancers of Athel Loren, though, jig a story of the young elf girl Naestrahan, who followed fairy lights and spites to a place even the Way Watchers dared not go, where the forest was so deep it spoke with a voice that sounded like the Allstate guy. And then she was never seen again, as there's two types of lost forest, the kind that gives swords to miners and the kind with a priapic fawn behind every bush. Either way, you're in for more wood than you can handle. The second part of this sister act begins with a hungry tribe of Beastmen, the most misunderstood and persecuted creatures in Warhammer, who dared to light fires at the forest edge just to keep from freezing to death, which of course caused the trees to whinge and complain so much that the Wood Elves were drawn to the source of their pain like hypochondriacs to WebMD. The Beastmen were hunted down one by one as arrows rained from the trees, the same trees that were now laughing at them and arguing whether or not Gorebull counted as beef. Then, Whack-With-All the Wild, Lord of the River Prance, hornpiped his way onto the stage, leading his war dancers in a suicidal step that killed countless Beastmen more, all because the forest never learned to share. But the Beastmen were never ones to go with the Orinoco flow, and when the Wood Elves ran out of arrows, they set about revenging themselves for years of New Age music and pan flute jokes, aiming to send Michael Flatley here back to the same chaos god that spawned U2 and Enya. The best of the Azrai tried to fight them, but instead found themselves cast in an amateur production of Europa and the Bull. It was curtains for them until their pointy ears heard a strange sound on the wind. A twin-engine eagle screamed over their heads like an A-10 warthog, leaving a trail of bodies in its wake. As it banked for another pass, an ancient dragon of the deep forest burst from the canopy with the roar of 1,000 vuvuzelas. Astride these two beasts were identical warrior maidens, except for one had hair black as midnight, the other's was white as snow, which makes them not identical, but there's no accounting for Games Workshop's copy editing. The dark-haired one leapt from her eagle to treat the wounded on the ground, while the pale-haired twin atop her dragon pursued the fleeing Beastie Boys, screaming something about sabotaging brass monkeys. With the fight over, the sisters introduced themselves as Queen Ariel's new representatives on the Great Council, which caused more than a few whispered concerns about their origin. Were they Naestrahan split into two by the weave? Did Ariel create them as a living manifestation of her bipolar disorder? Or were they Ariel's own children by the King of the Woods himself, making them true royalty and therefore deserving of a seat on the snooty council? When they summoned Lord Orion to ask, the twins called the goat man Daddy when he walked in, settling that question but raising a few more. The twins themselves are never seen apart, even though they're as unlikely a pair as Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan. Naestra is calm, collected, and serene. Arahan boasts a lethal destructiveness usually reserved for cheating boyfriends and country western songs. Naestra loves to sing to all the woodland critters. Arahan uses her dragon to barbecue them and keeps a list of recommended sauce pairings. If they were cheerleaders, Naestra would be the hot but nice one, who gives handjobs with the unerring clinical precision of a Japanese prostitute. Arahan would be the hot but messy one, who is nuttier than a squirrel turd and more likely to give you chlamydia than a second date. Also, she probably pokes holes in condoms. Not that she uses them, but your next girlfriend will be in for a real surprise. This odd couple is so committed to their good cop, bad cop routine that it even spills over into the game.
The very presence of these emerald horrors imperils our mission, Arahan.
Don't be so coy, sister. Just come out and say, let's kill thousands of orcs.
By far the weirdest thing about them, though, is that while one lives, the other can't die. They just fall down for a bit, and then pop back up like they've been pumped full of Viagra. Normally it's Arahan that bites off more than she can chew, and for those brief moments, Naestra loses her calm demeanor and goes from Murtaugh to Riggs, going berserk on anyone in her path until her sister revives again. In-game, this conjoined destiny manifests as a ward save and faster wound recovery time, coupled with a healing spell that ticks on whenever these sisters are wounded. Because these two are a package deal and you can't have one without the other. And even then, that's only if you can find them, as they normally live high above everyone else, looking down from their airy sorority in the 94027 zip code. It's like Beverly Hills, but less trashy television and more Teslas. It's in this eagle's nest of superiority that the sisters met the utterly dependable and stable shooting platform, Gwendolor, son of the King of Eagles, as every action pairing needs a sweet ride, and this is the closest they could find to a Pontiac Firebird in Warhammer. But if you're worried a feathered V8 lacks punch, you can always pursue the quest to unlock Cathan Har, a foul-tempered forest dragon who doesn't take guff from anyone, yet still knows better than to mouth off to Arahan or he'll wind up as boots and a matching clutch. When you've unlocked both mounts, whichever one the sisters aren't riding at the time hovers around doing whatever the girls ask in battle, hoping to catch them on the rebound. Sure, it sounds harsh, but these sisters are only working with what nature gave them. Firing from their backs, you'll be able to choose from Naestra's bow, the Talon of Dawn, that launches single bolts of light to melt through armor, or Arahan's Talon of Dusk, that unleashes a volley of poisoned arrows and is particularly useful when taking on large groups of men, which has no underlying implications about Arahan whatsoever. As for their niche, well, the sisters swoop into battle to buff all flying units in the Wood Elf roster with additional melee attack and a charge bonus, as well as a skill tree that gives them vanguard deployment and physical resistance, which sounds super impressive until you remember there's only 3 flying units in the entire Wood Elf roster, of which these ladies only need 1, as they give all Hawk Riders in their army the Volley of Kornos, a long-range, armor-piercing magic missile that penetrates deeper than a strap-on glued to a bunker buster. Couple that with reduced costs to all missile units and extra ammo for everyone involved, and you have a guerrilla army guaranteed to guard diamonds and murder Bruce Campbell or anyone else that wanders into their jungle. The Sisters DLC also comes with a smackerel of new units to fill in roster gaps, like the cheap light cav Glade Riders with spears, monstrous cav Great Stag Knights, and War Dancers who can switch hit between AP and anti-infantry mid-battle. Then there's Zoats. They're still Zoats. They come with an on-contact spell, Wimpy Heal, and an armor buff spell that some people will call Clutch, but I call them reskinned Dragon Ogres with turtle heads. Or you can ignore all of these new units and put on your best aviator sunglasses to field an entire army of F-35 Raptors with accompanying Sidewinder missiles. The Sisters' unique campaign mechanic is the Forge of Daith, where the smitten master craftsman of the Wood Elf race drops everything to forge the Sisters' whims on Vol's anvil. Every 10 turns, Daith will offer them the gift of an uncommon armor, weapon, talisman, or trinket, giving them an as you wish and then banging it out with the unspent energy of the involuntarily celibate. But nothing lights Daith's fires like these sisters winning a battle. Still soaked in blood and sweat, you can go straight to Daith and ask him to bang out a special request, as nothing else lubricates his smithing process like elf maiden sweat. Naestra prefers steady upgrades to existing gear, while Arahan says screw it and goes for huge temporary buffs. Either way, you'll have to choose between them, as only one twin can fit into Daith's sweaty basement at a time, no matter how much he wants to play Two Girls, One Forge. And since the Creative Assembly modeled the sisters to be thicker than a bowl of oatmeal, you almost feel bad for Daith's never-ending no-nut November. But such is the life of Daith the Simp. I should point out that the lore does make sure to say Daith dotes on the sisters like an uncle, but it's the creepy uncle that still drives an 80s Camaro, lives alone, and was never asked to babysit. The sisters start both campaigns, tango and cashing their way through the Witchwood of Nagarond. The Heralds of Ariel are tasked with restoring the forest to summon the eponymous Ariel for a final encounter with Throt the Unclean, the Skaven baddie of this DLC, whose sole goal in life is to give the sisters a three-armed shocker and then eat their mom, because nothing personifies the ravenous greed of capitalism like a overweight libidinous rat. You can increase a forest's health by capturing any provinces that touch it and burning them to the ground. Sure, you could colonize them, but the Ted Turner approach to reclamation is best, as it gives the fastest route to awaken the forest and summon Captain Planet, or Ariel. Either way, they both just want to turn people into trees. But the difference is that Ariel here looks like she spends all day charting ley lines and rubbing Orion's crystal balls, so that it's not a question of if this OP spellcaster has a back tattoo, but how many back tattoos, or is it just one big one? And since most aging hippies have a butterfly tattoo, does an aging butterfly get a hippie tramp stamp? Besides unlocking the Queen of Athel-Loren, Awakening Forests unlocks unique buildings with outrageous bonuses, and gives a single piece of amber to put towards an uber research technology in the mercifully reworked amber system. The roots of these forests also stretch across the Warhammer world, and you can teleport along them for a campaign that can be almost entirely defensive if you so choose, though you can still Johnny Appleseed your way across the old world, murdering anyone that doesn't vote Green Party. So, relight Daith's fires and bring balance back to nature one body at a time, as the Sisters of Twilight are ready to call in a helicopter gunship full of pain and bubblegum. And they're all out of bubblegum. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this Noob's Guide, there are more on this channel. You can subscribe to be notified when they release, or join the channel and support in their creation. Either way, there's plenty more reprehensible jokes and questionable references waiting on you, though admitting you knew them to begin with is always the hardest step.